Hello, Keith Rucker here at VintageMachinery.org. Guys, today got a little project we're going to be working on. This is for a local person that reached out to me. He has a LeBlond lathe that he's in the process of doing a restoration on. And in the process, he pulled the nut for the cross slide out, and it is extremely worn. The threads in here, the tops of these Acme threads, which should be flat across the top, they're like razor blades. It's really, really super thin. And he wants to know if I can make him a new nut. This is a bronze nut that cross slide goes in. So here's what we did. I've got a new casting done. It's done by Clark Easterling over at Windy Hill Foundry. And what I did is I took the original, I drew it up in CAD using Fusion 360. And once I had it drawn up, I created a pattern for this that had the proper draft angles, had the a split pattern, so it was in two pieces, had the shrink factor applied and everything else that you have to do when making patterns, and basically just 3D printed the pattern out. So one-time deal, 3D printing's fine. And sent that to Clark, and a couple of weeks later, I get back a nice bronze casting that he did that we will be using as a blank to make a new one from. So today we're going to start the machining process on this. Two operations we got to do. First, there's we got to machine the top of this, and there's a nut that fits up on it. Then we'll have to bore it out and actually thread it for the left-hand 5-pitch Acme thread that goes through it. Let me zoom you in here, show you these parts, and we'll get over here on the lathe and get started, seeing if we can get this thing made. So this is the original part here that we're going to be trying to replicate, and just a couple of things. There's got a nut that screws up on this post here. I think that's 1.25 inches, and I measured the threads. I think it was 16 threads. I'll double check that. And this is what basically mounts it into the lathe. And then over on this side, we have the hole that goes through it. This has been threaded with a 5-pitch Acme thread, left-hand thread. I think, again, this is 1.25 inches. I need to verify that, though. And here's our casting that we had made. And notice I did purposely make it a little bit thicker right here. We're going to put this in the lathe and basically turn this down, get all that flat down on the bottom done, get everything to the right length, and then get this threaded. This will be step one, is getting this post done right. Once that's done, we will flip it around in the lathe and we'll bore a hole through it, and we'll actually thread that. And it's going to be single point threaded with a boring bar, or a threading bar, I guess you could say, with a 5-pitch Acme insert. Probably going to be 2 separate videos on this as we go forward. Again, this is the casting that was done by Clark over at Windy Hill Foundry. If you're interested in seeing the process of how this was made, he does have a video up on his YouTube channel that shows the molding and pouring of this and everything else. So you can go take a look at that and see how it was made. So let's go over to the lathe and see if we can get this part set up. Again, I want to turn this part down here to the diameter, get the threading done, and also get the bottom machined where it's flat and machined down here on the bottom. So some of this in here is going to have to be turned off on the lathe as well. Let's go get set up to do that. So to get this thing set up over on the lathe, I am going to need to know where the center of this is so that I can kind of get it set up properly. So I'm just going to take a Sharpie here. This is just a centering tool here. And I'm just going to X that out. And because my Sharpie pen is a little bit wider than a pencil, I'm just going to do it in both directions, and that'll give me a rough idea of where the center of that is, so that whenever I'm setting that up over on the lathe, we can make sure that we've got the center of this identified. All right, let's go to the lathe now and get it set up. So first things first, I've got my 3-jaw chuck over here on the lathe, and to do this job I need to do my 4-jaw chuck, where I have 4 independent jaws that I can adjust each one individually. It's going to be in a regular shape that we're going to be gripping on here, and I can easily do that on this part with 4 jaws, whereas there's no way to do it with 3 jaws. So we're going to change this chuck out. Now my lathe has a D16 spindle on it, so it has basically some tabs that go into a little cam lock back here. To do this, you just take your chuck key. There's on this one there's 3. Usually D16 has 6 posts. This lathe only has 3. But you loosen those up, and the lathe, or the chuck rather, just comes out. And you can see the little post here on the back, and there's a little notch in here that a little cam engages in when you turn this. So right now that post will go in there. Let me see if I can show up in there and show you how that works. And I got you just kind of zoomed in here on this hole, and I got a flashlight, we can see what's going on. But when you take your tool here and turn that, right now the stud will go up in there. There's a notch in that piece, and as I turn that, you see it comes around, and it's actually cam shaped. So as you turn this, it's actually tightening that up so that it locks it in place. It actually pulls it in place, pulls it back tight up against the plate, and it works really well. This one is a D series. They made these in several different sizes. This one happens to be a D16. Like I said, normally there are 6 posts on a D16. This lathe only uses 3 of them. You just pull the other studs off, the ones that you're not using. Now I'm just going to bring my 4-jaw chuck up over here. And it's heavy, but I can get it on there. We'll put it in place, and I will turn these around. That'll pull that chuck up nice and tight against the back. And it is mounted on the lathe just like that. So that's all there is to changing these things out. Let's get our work mounted in there now. All right, here we go. I'm going to start by just pulling these out. I'm going to pull the 2 opposing sides out like such. And this is how this is going to go in here. So let's see. I'm just going to kind of eyeball center this thing from one side to the other. We'll dial it in here. Whoops. In a minute. We'll get it centered up here in a minute. And now I've got my other 2 jaws that we will tighten in. It needs to come toward me, I can tell already. So I'm going to push it down with this one a little bit. All right, now we need to get it centered up. I'm going to pull my tailstock in with the live center, and we're just going to try to get this little X lined up on center. Let me do that real quick. All right, I can tell that it needs to go in this direction. So I'm going to loosen this side up just a little bit, and we'll tighten this side up, and we're going to move it over, and it needs to go a little bit more. A little bit different here than the way I normally do this in a 4-jaw chuck. Usually I'm using a dial indicator, but on this case there's really not anything to indicate off of. Everything's a rough casting, so there's going to be natural variability in it. But I'm just kind of easing this thing back, and I'm going to work in one direction first. Yeah, I think I went just a tad too far. Let's snug it up that way. Now I'm going to look at it this way, and again it needs to come to me just a little bit. So we'll move this one down. I think it needs to come just a little bit more. I'm just getting it close. It doesn't have to be perfect here. We're going to be machining it, and then that's going to establish where those where it's actually at. So I'm going to move that in a little bit closer. We're really close to having it kind of right there on the center of where we want to be. Just kind of looking here. I'm going to take one more look at it. And now what I want to do is turn on the lathe and just see if I can visually see any major run out. And again, this is a rough casting, so you'll probably see a little bit, but as we turn it, it'll straighten itself out. And that actually looks pretty darn good. What I'm looking to make sure I don't have a lot of wobble in any of the directions there, and it looks good. So I think what we're going to do is I'm going to start by facing the top of that piece, and I am going to put a center in it just to kind of give me a little bit of extra support and make sure it's not wobbling around, and we'll go from there. Let's get set up for that. I am just going to face this surface here. Probably going to have to turn some of that down later because it is a little bit longer than what it needs to be, but I just want to have a surface to start with. I'm going to come in here with a center drill. I'm going to put a center in this, and that will allow me to put my live center in there, and that will just give it a little bit of extra support. Make sure it doesn't move around in that jaw, which I don't think it would, but sure not going to hurt anything. All right, now we got the live center in there, and again, all that will do is make sure that this thing doesn't move around. Like I said, the way it's chucked up, it's pretty much locked in place, but it won't hurt to have that little bit of extra support. All right, guys, so first thing I want to do is I want to get the part down here kind of faced and to the right depth. Now, before I put this in here, I measured what it is from the back of this to the top of this casting right here, and I know what it needs to be. It needs to be 1 3/4 inches. Right now it's 2 inches. I got 1/4 inch I need to take off that. That's a lot. So you know, this is not a critical measurement. Again, we'll have a rough casting all the way around it, but I do know that I need to kind of touch off on this and then go in 1/4 inch, 250 thousandths. So what I'm going to do is exactly that. We're going to touch off, and we're just going to, I'm going to make a little skim pass here, and we're going to call that 0. And I'm going to go into my digital readout on my lathe. I'm going to 0 things out. Now I can keep track as I'm moving in how much metal that I've taken off of that. So we're just going to, again, face this off, and I need to go in 250 thousandths, and we'll be where we need to be on that measurement. I'm just showing you what's going on here. We're machining this bottom flat, and it will be parallel or perpendicular to this when we get to turning on that as well. So we just continue on. Like I said, I got 250 thou to take out of there. Good bit of metal. We'll bring you guys back here in a minute once we kind of get where we need to be. All right, this will be my final pass here. This will be 250 thousandths. Feed in a little bit slower, make sure I get a real nice finish on that. Come back out. All right. So we've got that bottom machine. Now I need to work on shank up here. So you kind of see what the original looks like. We've got 2 diameters here. This one is 1.375 inches, 1 3/8, and then up here we've got 1 1/4 that's going to be threaded. So I'm going to start by turning that to 1 3/8. And we're starting out at roughly 1.5 inches, a little bit over. So what I'm going to do is we're going to come in here, and again, I'm just going to touch off on this. I'm going to get a clean pass. It's going to take enough to get a clean pass on it. We'll get a measurement, and once we do that, we can dial in and go to our 1 3/8. All right. Not cleaned up 100%, but enough for us to get a measurement on. And let's see where we're at here. We're at 1 inch, 5/20. I'm just going to put that right in my digital readout. 1.520, enter, and we're going to 375, 1 inch 375. Take a 100th thou there. I think I'm going to get a micrometer, measure that so that we can make sure we're right on size. As far as measuring between calipers and micrometer is going to pretty much always give you a more accurate reading. When you got a close tolerance on something, I would recommend using a micrometer. If you got loose tolerances, plus or minus 10 thousandths, a set of calipers are fine. So right now, according to my micrometer, we're measuring 1 inch 413 thousandths, actually 13.5. So make sure I get that in here exactly what it is. 1 inch 0.4135. All right, we're going to 375. I'm just going to probably just dial that right in. Right there, according to the digital readout, so we're just going to take that right down the size. Here again, get a measurement. We're about a 1 thou over size. I'm just going to take a spring pass here. I'm not going to feed in, we're just going to let it kind of go down. With the tool pressure taken off, it's going to take off a little bit extra metal, and hopefully we'll be right there where we need to be. I can actually see a little tiny line as it's cutting down. It's not taking off much. Guys, what I did here, I didn't even feed in. This is just taking the same cut I made before, but we don't have the tool pressure on this one, so that we did on the last one. So it is taking just a tiny amount more, and we'll see where we're at. Okay. And we are right on 375, dead nuts on it, right where we need to be. All right. So again, going back to the original, there is a step over here. I've measured that. That's 400 thousandths from the bottom down here to the top of that. And again, that diameter that's going to be threaded there is going to be 1 1/4 inch, 1 inch 250 thousandths. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to come in here with my cutter. We're just going to touch off on this bottom right there. I'm going to zero out my z-axis, or my z-axis, and I can now measure up 400 thousandths exactly. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to dial that right in on the digital readout. And when I do, I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to touch off. I'm going to make a mark. And that'll just give me a visual cue as to how much I'm turning off. Now, on my x-axis, the axis that we're turning on, we've already got that dialed in very nicely on the digital readout. So we're going to 1 inch 0.250. So I'm going to dial in another 100 thou here. This is going to leave me a little bit more to take off, and we're going to turn that down. And I've got the visual cue on how deep I want to turn, plus I have the reading on the digital readout that I can actually look at once I get down there to know exactly where to stop. But I like having that visual to see where I need to stop at. And I'm just going to feed in by hand here, and I'm going to watch the numbers on the digital readout until we get to 400. I'm just moving it in real slowly by hand, and we're there, right there. I'm just going going to verify. This should be reading what my DRO is reading, but I want to make sure. We've got 1 inch, 50, 60, 71, and that's exactly what we're reading on the digital readout. So I'm just going to dial in that 250. And we're going to cut that down. Again, I got my visual to stop by, but I'm also going to take it down to 400 on the digital readout by hand here. Just moving it in real slowly until I can read right at 4000. That's where we're at. And I'm going to verify my measurement again. See if we need to fuzz off a little bit extra or what. So let's see where we're at. So again, we're about a thou over. So I'm going to take a spring pass, and hopefully that'll get us right where we need to be. Come up to that shoulder very carefully by hand. I'm going to trust that my number is right on the diameter, and I'm just going to feed out now so I have a nice square shoulder there. We should be where we need to be on the diameter, but let's just double check and make sure here. And yeah, we're maybe a half a thou under, but for the threads, that's not going to hurt a thing. All right, let's get set up. We need to put some threads on there. So before we start threading, I did go back and look at my original, and they did relieve about 100 thousandths on the bottom side of the threads. I don't know if that's necessary or not, but we're gonna do what they did. So while I'm still set up right here, I'm gonna go ahead and put that relief down there in the bottom. And again, what I'm gonna do is we're gonna come in there and we're gonna touch off on that shoulder, which is 400. And I'm gonna re-zero that out. And I'm gonna come up to 100 thou, which is about how much that relief is. Right there. And what is that diameter on the inside there? So it looks like it's 175, 1 inch, 175 thousandths. So I'm just gonna carve that out real quick. We'll just feed in. I'll go to 175. That relief out. There we go. Now I think we can set up for threading. So let me figure out what pitch this is, and we'll get set up for that and bring you right back. Got my lathe slowed down here. First thing I want to do is I want to come in here and just chamfer this front edge with my threading tool. I like to put the same angle as my threads on there, kind of lead into. And while I'm in here, I just want to break this corner back here so that we have a little transition there. All right, so now what we're going to do is I'm going to come in. I've got my tool at 0. I'm going to touch off here. All right, we're barely touching right there. I've got this set for 16 threads per inch, which is what the original is. I'm just going to take a little light pass on the first pass and verify my threads are right. I'll wait for a number to come around on the thread dial, and we'll come in there and cut that out. Now I'm going to take my thread gauge here, and I always like to verify, and we are on 16 threads per inch. All right, so now we're going to single point thread these. I'm going to wait for a number to come around on my thread dial again. And we'll start scratching them out. while I'm single point threading these, right now I'm doing about a 5/1000 in feed on the compound, and I'm just going to keep going until I see the tops of those threads start to get sharp. Once I see them start to get sharp, I know we're getting close to where we want to be at, and we'll start just doing test fits with our nut until we get a nice fit. Since I have the original nut, I'm just going to go for a fit rather than go for a spec. And we're getting close. Still got a little flat on that top. These are 60-degree threads, so they should come to a point, and they will naturally come to a point when they are at the right depth, but you're going to, again, have to do a little fine-tuning to get them, get the fit that you want. All right, we're getting close. Not quite there yet. We'll do another 5/1000. And it's not quite there yet. I'm going to do a scratch pass here and do a test fit. I think it's going to be too tight right now, just looking at it, but I find it better to just kind of check it out. I didn't feed in that time. I was just doing a scratch pass. So I'm going to stop. We're going to pull our steady rest off here, not our steady rest, but our live center. This is the original nut, and I'm going for a nice fit. So we're going to see if this starts up on there. I don't think it's going to quite go yet, and it's starting, but it's not quite where it needs to be. So we're going to take a little bit more off of that, but we're real close. We come back in. I'm going to give it about another 3/1000 on the depth. Make another pass, and I'm going to do another test fit now. And that, a little tight, but it's going up on there. It will thread up on there. That's about the way the other one was. So I think we're good there. Now when I get to this point, what I like to do is sometimes you get a little burr up on the top of that thread, which can make it a little bit tighter. So I'm just going to take some emery cloth here, and not a whole bunch, but we're just kind of knocking those tops off, taking off any burrs, and a lot of times that right there alone will improve your fit. And we're going to call that good. Like I said, that's about what the original was doing. It's threading up on there. It's tight, but it's good. And with that, we've got this done. Oh, there is one thing I need to check. One other thing I need to check before I get done with this, and I should have done it before I threaded this, but I just forgot about it, but no big deal. We can take care of it now. I want to see how long this stud is sticking up off the top. So I've just got a little depth attachment put on my dial calipers here. We're going to go down and measure that. We are basically 1 inch, 210, 1 inch, 210 thousandths. I'm going to measure the original one. And as you can see, it's a little bit shorter. Get a good measurement on that. 175. So we do need to shorten this top. So I'm going to go in here and we'll just real quickly face this off and get it to the right length. All right, we need to take about 35 thousandths off the height of this post. So I'm going to go in here and just do a touch off. I'm going to zero out my Z-axis on the digital readout, and I can go in 35 thou. We're just going to face it off a little bit at a time. Right where we need to be. All right, I'm going to put my threading tool back in here now. I want to just put that roundabout chamfer on there again, which will give me a nice lead-in angle that will hopefully let that nut screw right back up on there. And it's probably going to be a little stiff getting started, but once it goes up on there, it'll kind of cut those threads back out where they need to be. So my nut is a little bit tight going up on there, a little bit tight. It's going up on there, but it's a little bit tighter than I like. So, you know, if I hadn't already taken my threading stuff off, I could have just chased it another time real lightly, and it probably would have cleaned up just fine. Another option is you could run a die up on this thing out of a tap and die set, and just clean it up and finish it up if you just need to get it cleaned up real nice. Problem is this is an oddball size thread. I don't have a die for 1¼ 16. So this is another little trick that you can do. This is a thread file, if you've ever seen one. These have different thread pitches on there, 13, 11, 20, 16. There's my 16. And the space between those match the thread pitch. I'm just going to take this and I'm just going to lightly go down it. I think all we got on there is it's just a little bit of roughness in there. On this brass or bronze, you get a little, it sometimes doesn't turn super smooth, particularly when you're doing a deep form cut like that. So I'm just going to take this and run it down through there and hopefully clean those threads up just enough. There it goes. So I got my lathe running kind of slow. I'll make sure I'm on the 16 threads side, and we're just going to push that in there. And just knock them back just a little bit. We're filing them out. Now, let's try our nut again and see how it goes on there now. If I can get it started. Yeah. See, now it's just screwing right up on there, which is what we want. So all it took was not really going in any deeper, but just kind of deburring in there and just making it a little bit smoother. So that fits good. One more thing before we get out of here. Again, on the original, they relieved down here in this bottom. I don't know that that's necessary, but we're going to put it in there. It's not going to hurt anything. So let me get set up for that, and we'll knock that little bit out, and I think we'll be done with this. All right, I got a cutter that's going to fit right up in there. It's about 25 thousandths deep, and it comes out about 200 thou. So we'll just come in, speed it back up a little bit. We'll go right down there into that root. I'll touch off there. I'm going to kind of get down in that root again. And I'm going to zero out both axes on my digital readout. I'm going to feed in 25 thou. Just feeding in slowly by hand here. Right there. Now I'm going to pull it to me 200 thousandths. Which is right there. And we should have that relief in the bottom, just like the original. And with that, our part is done. There we go. I think I'm happy with how that turned out. Looks just like the original. Maybe even better. I don't know. So what we got left to do, of course, is to put the hole through it and get that threaded for 5-pitch Acme thread. Let me show you something. So this is the tool that we'll actually thread this with. We'll put this in the lathe and, of course, come in there and do those left-handed Acme threads. But I'm going to put that in there, and I just want you to see how much wear is in those. So you can see a lot of slop in that nut. That should be, you know, when new, it should have 0 slop in there at all. That's excessive. Like I said, this one is worn out significantly, and but we'll have a brand new one when it's done. So coming up next, I can't do this today because I don't have the threaded rod to go up in here to check my fit with. He's going to bring that by. He actually has a new rod that he made for this. or bought for it. I'm not sure, but he's got a brand new one that doesn't have any wear in it, and that's what we're going to be machining it for. But we will set this up over on the lathe. We'll drill and bore that hole out to the proper size, and then we'll come in with our threading tool, and we'll do single point threading, internal threading on the lathe, and get this thing all set up. So that'll be coming up in an episode soon. So for now, though, that's going to pretty much be all we can do today. Well, there we go, guys. Some fun work over here on my Monarch lathe, turning this thing out. A little bit unconventional, showing how to chuck in an irregular shape, and but once you get it in the lathe, it's pretty much all turning. So hope you enjoyed seeing that, and be looking forward to finishing this project up just as soon as we get everything we need to wrap it up, and hopefully that'll be coming to you very soon. Guys, with that, that's going to be a wrap. As always, thanks so much for watching. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Those thumbs up and comments are always greatly appreciated. Hit that bell icon up there. You can get notifications when new videos are posted to the site. And as always, a big, huge thank you both to the subscribers of the site as well as to those who support the site financially through PayPal and Patreon, etc. It's what enables me to be able to justify spending the time out here filming and editing and everything that goes along with this, rather than just making parts all day long and being able to make my money that way. So you guys that do that, you really help out a lot, more than you realize, and that's greatly appreciated. Guys, with that, we're going to sign off again. We'll catch you on the next video. Thanks for watching.